And lastly, you guys have hung on. And lastly, we're going to look at paired two samples. So here we have different pitchers. In pitcher 1, pitched from the stretch and the average speed was 76 miles per hour. Pitched from the windup and the average speed was 74 miles per hour. So what we're wondering is the difference between these two. We wonder if the mean difference is different than 0. So here we could say, here's the difference. And this is stretch minus the windup. And so the difference is the stretch minus the windup. And I could copy that down. Okay. And this data is paired because data from here and data from here, you can't switch them. You can't take the stretch data from pitcher 1 and the windup data from pitcher 2. They go hand in hand. And that is why they're paired. You cannot resort one column and have it be the same. Now let's make a histogram of this data. I don't know what I just did. So let's include that. Let's insert. Oh, something's wrong. What's wrong? We'll come here. We're going to insert our graph. There we go. And I noticed that I spelled that wrong. Okay, so if we look at this, do I think that the difference is different than 0? Well, here's 0. And it might be the case that some more are greater than 0, but I don't know. It's not convincing. I don't see any convincing evidence that the mean is different than 0. So my guess, based on our histogram, of the differences, my guess is that we are not going to reject the null hypothesis. All right, now let's go ahead and, oh, by the way, we're seeing, are those differences different than 0 or not? And so we have that two-tailed test. All right. So let's go ahead and run the test. We're going to look at data. We're going to look at paired data. We are pairing this first column, and then we're pairing the second column, and I'm going to highlight everything. I'm just going to Control-Shift down to get everything. We're hypothesizing the difference is 0. I did include the labels here. I have row 1, and we'll put the output, up here. All right, so now we have our paired data. And we have, this is the average stretch, this is the average wind up. Let me just make those a little bigger. So I'm going to reduce the font size here. Okay, And then we have a lot of our information from our hypothesis test. It will give you a correlation. We're not going to do that right now. But it says our test statistic is 1.78 approximately. So our test statistic, 1.78. What is our p-value? For the two-tailed test, this is our p-value. So we'll say about 0.77. Should we reject it? That's greater than 5%. No, do not reject the null hypothesis. So assuming the null hypothesis. So the mean difference between the average stretch and wind-up velocities is 0. The probability, what did we observe? We observed a difference of 0.37 miles per hour. So the probability of seeing that or the other way, so that one of them exceeds the other by 0.37. So we can just say the probability, the sample means will differ by more than 0.37 miles per hour is 7.8%. So assuming there's no difference, the probability that we'll see stuff like what we saw in our sample is quite common. So do not reject the null hypothesis. We're not going to say there's a significant difference. There is no significant difference. I'll just say the mean difference between a pitcher's stretch and wind-up velocity is not significantly different than 0. All right, there we go.